Hey guys, welcome back to a new episode of the Slapshot Podcast. It's me and Nathan here once again, and today we will be talking about the Ryan Reaves trade to the New York Rangers. And
Mm.
this has a lot to be uncovered. So, as we all know, in May of this season, Tom Wilson does what he usually does, is by just almost absolutely obliterating people. This time he did it to star player Artemi Panarin, Pavel Buchnevich, and Ryan Strome. He ended Panarin's season and did not have a really happy ending. A fight broke out right the next game. And so Wilson did not get suspended. George Peros did not suspend Wilson, yet he did suspend Buchnevich for just a high stick. So there was a complete baffle about that. But Wilson is now officially the NHL's most hated player. And there's one guy that we've all known who's been able to destroy Tom Wilson, and that's obviously Ryan Reaves. So the Rangers went ahead and traded a third-round pick and acquired him. Now, honestly, this is a great deal for the Rangers. Of course, the meaning behind trading Reaves is pretty obvious. They need an enforcer. They haven't had an enforcer in a very long time with that type of grit since the days of Sean Avery and other guys out there like Brandon Dubinsky as well. Those guys were back there in the 2010s. But honestly, if we look at this, Ethan, Ryan Reaves is now on the Rangers, as I just said. He's signed for a $1,750,000 contract. He'll become a UFA next season. What would you like to see from Ryan Reaves from the Rangers, especially?
I mean, we already know what Ryan Reaves brings to the table, and I'm sure we've seen it. He's got his own compilations on YouTube that I will admit to watching sometimes. And he brings that presence that every team could use a little bit of some. That toughness, that roughness, that kind of presence that you will love in the playoffs. And especially playing against guys like Tom Wilson, guys like Brad Marchand, Tom Wilson, who bring a little bit of an annoyance to the teams that they're playing against. And Ryan Reaves is the guy to shut that down. Definitely a guy that gets teams very amped up. New York Rangers, definitely a team that needed someone like this as well. New York Rangers, definitely a team on the rise up. All these prospects coming in, all these guys that they've got. And then, of course, they've got their star presences like Panarin. And they definitely need someone. They needed something like this. They needed someone to boost the confidence of all their players and make sure to know to all their players that they're safe out there on the ice. And if anyone has anything to say about it, they can answer to Ryan Reaves. Ryan Reaves, we know what he did on Vegas. We know what he does to Tom Wilson, and he'll definitely continue doing that in New York. And I'm sure he's happy to be there.
Yeah, honestly, I'm hyped up about this. And of course, people are going to call the Rangers, they're kind of cowards for doing this. But again, they can't be saying that for long if they see Ryan Reeves on the ice. And he's putting out a message for New York. This team is really young. I mean, most of their team, I'm looking at it right now, are all on entry-level contracts. Kravtsov, Kako, Lafreniere, Keandre Miller, Zach Jones. They have very limited veterans on their team, which I can only probably name 4 or 5. In like Jacob Trouba, Chris Kreider, Mika Zibanejad, Artemi Panarin, and Ryan Strome. They left Buchnevich out, but maybe this can show that Chris Drury made a very smart move here by getting Reaves. Of course, Buchnevich was just a salary dump, but again, it's hard to consider. Like what Tom Wilson did was obviously unacceptable, but was it really worth trying to get payback by getting another enforcer here? I don't know if this trade was meant for Tom Wilson or was it meant to have an enforcer in general. What were your thoughts on that?
I mean, of course, we saw what happened with Tom Wilson, the outrage. Even I was outraged as a Leafs fan, seeing that something like that can go unpunished in the NHL. And seeing as New York is a team without that kind of presence in their roster, you can't really argue that they do have that kind of presence in their roster. They definitely needed someone to come in and show their toughness and show that New York is not this young team that can be thrown around just the way that Washington threw them around, the old veterans and toughness of Washington. New York is not that team to be thrown around. They need to show as well that New York can have the roughness for the playoffs. And I feel like Ryan Reaves coming in here not only will be rough himself as he's known to be, but will bring out the roughness in a lot of other guys and a lot of young guys, especially on the Rangers themselves. And I think that, yeah, not only is he there for Tom Wilson and any other bullies in that area, but he's just there for the long term as well. Rangers can be a
And
team that push the playoffs for sure.
Absolutely. Lastly, just wanted to say this. I mean, like, this team is ready to fight. You saw the game after this happened. The next game, first thing that happened was a 3-fight scene. Right off the draw was a brawl, and this team is willing to fight. they're willing to speak out. You saw Mika Zibanejad talking about this act. He called it horrifying. He had zero respect for it. And unfortunately, no one was there at that time. The tough guys were not there to even stand up to Tom Wilson. Chris Kreider was injured. Ryan Lindgren was injured. Jacob Trouba was injured. Those three guys are easily considered the toughest guys on the team. Those guys are the guys who are going to show Tom Wilson they have no mercy for what happened. But again, like, this is unacceptable. And I mean, George Peros knows better than that. This is an easy suspension. But thanks, guys, for tuning in. And definitely comment below what your thoughts are. And have a good night.